Come on. They're far in already. That's quite a shock. We've read so much already. The meaning of words. Learning the meaning of words is often framed as a problem of linking the word to the world and vice versa. So upon hearing a piece of new language, say Gavagai, the infant is confronted with a seemingly endless range of possible things it could mean, or its semiotics. For example, Gavagai could mean that rabbit I see in front of me. The action of hoping, the way it is hopping, the ground it is hopping on, the color of the rabbit, everything except a rabbit, the direction of the wind at the time, the attitude of the speaker towards the rabbits, and so on. How do children know which was the intended meaning? One way in which children start to understand what word means is through cross-situational learning, figure 4.2. Adults too obviously play a key role in structuring these interactions with children in a way that can help word learning. For example, when speaking with young children, adults are more likely to use so-called tutorial questions, i.e. asking questions they already know the answers to, and to adopt a child-centered approach, i.e. taking a child's topic as a conversational starting point and expanding thereafter. The use of international type language by others can also provide a strong cue to meaning. For example, Carpenter and colleagues, 1998, had an experimenter say there or whoops after completing an action. Children who were much more likely to imitate the action associated there, the intentional linguistic description there, than the accidental one, whoops. Likewise, words such as uh-oh or oops reveal that. Figure 4.2. An adult chooses a word associated with the idea that they want to communicate. The first time a child hears the word, the child does not know whether the novel word refers to, and now best she can do is remember the association between the situation and the word. The next time she hears with one object familiar from and one new object. Cross-situational learning works by building up a history of the association between language and context in which it is used. Over time, the idea is that children begin to share the same word idea association as adults. Ibbotson, 2013. Speakers not achieved their goal, and that are used by 2-year-olds to abandon a possible association between a new noun and an object, or a new verb and an action. This shows that children are using their theory of mind, skills to work out what the speaker intended to communicate, and this helps them home in the meaning of the word. Adults also seem to have an unspoken understanding that children expect the new nouns will be introduced so-called basic level names such as dog rather than mammal, a bigger category that includes dogs or spot, a smaller category of dogs that picks out an individual. It is as if speakers are balancing the needs of being informative. Too high level a category is not predictive of an individual, and the efficient too low level a category is predictive of only that individual. When words deviate from the expectation, adults tend to structure their language to mark them in some way. For example, when adults present part names to children, very rarely do they simply point and say, "Look at the feather." Instead, they typically begin by talking about the whole object. "This is a bird," and then introduce the part name with a possessive construction. And these are his feathers, which is similar making for smaller categories. A peacock is a type of bird, and bigger categories. These are animals. Birds and cats are kinds of animals. And in this meaning isn't clear, then children expect adults to be informative, cooperative speakers. Children as young as 1-year-olds are able to point to and say something like wa, la, and by 2 years old they can ask, "What's that?" In a classic study, the first word, Nelson, 1973, found that most of the children she studied had a word that was used in an inquiring, clarifactory way before they learned 50 words, with some of the children acquiring such a word as a part of the first 10 words, so that children don't learn the meaning of the word like the, it, or do by having an adult define them for them, assuming the unlikely situation in which a child could find an adult capable of doing so. They learn the meaning of the words and phrases by employing a range of social, linguistic, and statistical strategies. Well, that's got to be some of the worst writing I've ever seen. 0 of it went in because of the dyslexia, and he just made a right mess of it. Through their play, exploration, and social interaction, children use a variety of strategies to understand what words mean. Creativity and conformity. When children are learning language, they are trying to balance creativity and conformity in so-called overgeneralization errors. Children demonstrate that they are not passive sponges, just repeating back what they hear, as no adult says, "It wented, that goed over there," or "I swimmed." Children are finding patterns and being creative with them as they try to figure out for themselves the deeper rules adults play by. In this case, added when you talk about things in the past. But children, language needs to be conformed to the norms of the language they are learning if they are going to be effective communicators with others who share the same norms. Of course you have added. One added to 2. This bloke's a bit. Swim the general? Why? Of course you blooming say that. It's around the bend. The first thing to note, why is everything done by typical? Neurotypical. They really don't understand how that kind of rubbish doesn't make any sense. The first thing to note is that the errors are relatively rare in child speech, with estimates ranging from 2 to 5%, depending on the areas of language we focus on and what counts as an error. Obsessive compulsiveness. Given the complexity of language, this level of accuracy is incredibly impressive, underscoring what is exquisitely tuned process language acquisition is. Why the hell would you write that line? That's rubbish. Before we consider how children eventually overcome such errors, let us briefly look at the way in which adults respond when they hear children's errors. More like blooming scholars' errors. In theory, this could be one source of evidence children use to gauge whether they are generalized along the right lines, typically through adults do not misunderstand or correct children more often when they speak ungrammatically correct compared with when they speak grammatically. That's because it's not their choice, it's not them speaking. Look at the following transcripts from a real-life father and son interaction as an example. Father: where is the big piece of paper I gave you yesterday? Child: remember, I write it on it. Father: oh, that's right. Don't you have any paper down here, buddy? McWhinney and Snow, 1990. While children receive plenty of positive evidence of how their language works, children rarely receive direct negative evidence on what is unacceptable in their language. For example, when the child produces an unconventional form and is directly corrected by an adult, you're not supposed to correct them, you're supposed to support them and involve yourself. Where there is examples of direct feedback in neutralistic discourse, children seemed resistant, even willfully stubborn, towards adults' attempts to correction, as the following transcripts show. Child: one spoon, Daddy. Father: you mean you want the other spoon? Child: yes, I want one spoon, please, Daddy. Can you say the other spoon? Other one spoon. Say other spoon, spoon, other spoon, other spoon. Now give me the other one spoon. My teacher holded the baby rabbit and we patted it. Did you say your teacher held the baby rabbit? Yes. What did you say? She said, did. She holded the baby rabbit and patted them. Did you say she held them tightly? No, she holded them loosely. Interestingly, these overgeneralizations errors can follow a U-shaped curve of development. Well, that's quite interesting, because I don't see anything wrong with a child saying what they mean to say. Why should anybody else? Performance starts out as good, few errors, then gets worse, many errors, before getting better again, no errors. During this process, children might actually produce both the unconventional form, e.g. goed, at the same time as the conventional one went. U-shaped curves of development are especially interesting in psychologists, as they indicate children are restructuring and reorganizing what they understand, and they can represent clues that they have switched learning strategies. U-shaped curves are not limited to language learning. However, they are important reminders that development is not always linear. More experience does not always result in better performance. The problem of how words and phrases like wired, righted, other, one spoon, and holded ever come to regarded as unacceptable if children are never directly told that they are. Negative evidence is a key question in the field of language acquisition. There have been a number of ideas put forward to explain how children eventually overcome these errors, including the more often. It's interesting, they always think it's an error and not just a personal preference. I like to speak my own language. It's not an error, it's a preference. The more often a child hears a verb in a particular grammatical context, e.g., I've suggested the idea to him, the less likely they are to use it in a new context that they haven't heard it in. E.g., I suggested him the idea, Ambridge et al. 2012. If a child repeatedly hears a verb in a particular phrase, e.g., I filled the cup with water, that serves the same communicative function as possible and herdage generalization, I filled water into the cup, then the child infers that the generalization is not available. Goldberg, 2007. Some combinations of words are associated with particular meanings, and as children refine this knowledge, they will cease to insert verbs that do not bear these meanings elements. The joke giggled him. Pinker, 1989. Evidence from several languages shows that the maturation in the cognitive abilities that are independent of language, such as memory and attention, can explain the pattern of individual differences in overgeneralization errors. Ibbotson, 2020. Overgeneration errors are powerful illustrations of corrective power of language and the mechanism children use to learn it. An excellent. I guess we've